If you'd asked me 5 years ago what kind of man I was, I would have told you I was the sort who kept his word, especially when it came to family. That's the thing about promises made in childhood. They stick around long after you outgrow baseball cards and superhero capes. My name's Alex Miller. I'm 39, and up until recently, I thought I'd finally beaten my own family's curse. I grew up in a weathered house outside Austin, Texas, where secrets were about as common as mosquitoes in July. My father, Ray Miller, was a legendary car salesman, a man with a story for every occasion and a wink for every waitress. For a long time, I thought he was just charming. Then I started noticing other things: lipstick on his collars, long absences, and that certain perfume made cheap, floral, impossible to scrub out of the seat fabric in his F-150. My mother, Susan, ran a little coffee shop downtown. She was the exact opposite of Dad, steady, kind, with a heart big enough to forgive nearly anything. Too big, maybe. I'd watch her glance at the door every night, waiting for Ray to come home. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes I could hear her crying softly in the kitchen after he stumbled in at 2 a.m., smelling like bourbon and regret. The older I got, the more I swore I'd never put anyone through that. At 12, I told myself, if anyone ever cheats on me, I'm done. If I ever start thinking about cheating, I'll leave first. Real original, right? But when you're a kid, drawing lines in the sand feels like power. Turns out, life's a lot messier than that. That's why when I met Megan in high school, something clicked right away. She was new in town, sitting by herself at lunch, reading a battered copy of Catcher in the Rye. I was awkward, but she laughed at my dumb jokes. Before I knew it, we were walking home from school together, trading secrets about our parents and dreams for the future. She told me about her childhood in San Antonio, her dad leaving when she was 10, her mom working 2 jobs just to pay the bills. We were 2 kids with broken home backgrounds and the wild idea we could build something better. We dated through the rest of high school. There were fights, were there fights, but somehow we always circled back. We gave each other one last chance, more times than I can count. By the time we graduated, it felt like getting married was the only logical next step. Why waste time, right? So, 9 months after graduation, I stood in my only suit, sweating bullets, while Megan walked down the aisle in her mom's borrowed dress. We were 19 and 22, optimistic and naive as you please. The early years weren't easy. I worked my way up from selling used pickups at a dusty lot to managing the commercial accounts at Austin Fleet Motors. Megan bounced between part-time jobs until she landed a steady gig as an office manager at Bright Smiles Dental, a shiny new clinic in Round Rock. We bought a modest house in Cedar Park, one of those neighborhoods where everyone waves, but nobody really talks. We didn't have kids right away. Honestly, we weren't in a rush. Megan said she wanted to find herself, and I thought, sure, let's travel. Let's try to do better than our parents. She took up yoga. I started running ultra marathons. Our friends joked that we were the high-functioning, dysfunctional couple, always busy, always doing, but never slowing down. Denny Harris, my best friend since high school, stuck with me through all of it. Denny's a mechanic grease under his nails, heart of gold, always ready with a bad joke and a beer after a long day. He got married, divorced, and married again before I ever figured out how to grill chicken without setting off the smoke alarm. The thing is, if you'd looked at us from the outside, you'd have seen exactly what I wanted people to see. A couple who'd beaten the odds, built something real, lived by their own rules. Megan was smart, funny, ambitious. She'd organize office parties and come home with stories about her coworkers, mostly funny, sometimes a little too detailed. There were girls' nights, spa days, sudden interests in salsa dancing, and wine tasting. If I'm being honest, I started noticing little things. Megan started working late more often. Her phone, once an afterthought, was suddenly always at hand, always with the screen turned away from me. She started locking it. There were girls' weekends I only found out about the day before, and when she came home, she seemed distant, preoccupied. Not cold, exactly, just elsewhere. Of course, I told myself it was nothing. We'd been together since we were teenagers. Who was I to begrudge her some fun, some time away from me? Denny teased me, "Buddy, if my ex had spent half as much time at the spa, we might still be married." I laughed it off. I trusted Megan. Or maybe I just wanted to trust her more than I trusted my own gut. Sometimes, late at night, I'd lie awake, replaying old arguments and wondering when things got so complicated. I remembered my mother, sitting at that kitchen table, praying for the phone to ring. I'd promised myself I'd never end up like her. And yet, sometimes, in the dim light of my own living room, I caught myself waiting, just waiting for Megan to come home, for some part of me to stop feeling like I was missing something everyone else could see. But I told myself, this is just life. This is what happens when you're together for 20 years. People change. Maybe we both needed space. Turns out, sometimes when you're searching for cracks, you find a chasm you never knew existed. And that, my friend, is where this story really began. I remember the exact moment the world shifted under my feet. It was a Thursday afternoon, one of those sticky Texas days where the air conditioning in the office only half works, and the traffic outside sounds like a steady wave crashing against your sanity. I was sitting at my desk in Austin Fleet Motors, trying to convince a client from San Marcos that, yes, their new work van really did come with a 3-year warranty, and no, it did not cover acts of God, fire ants, or their brother-in-law's inability to drive stick. My phone buzzed. I checked the number local one, not in my contacts. For a split second, I almost let it go to voicemail. Maybe I should have. "Hello, Alex Miller speaking," I answered, trying to sound cheerful. There was a pause, then a woman's voice, careful, a little nervous. "Hi, Alex. My name is Danielle. I work with Megan at Bright Smiles." That caught my attention. "Hey there, Danielle. Everything okay? Megan's not hurt, is she?" "No, nothing like that. Sorry, Look, I know this is weird. I got your number from the emergency contact list. I hope you don't mind." A dozen scenarios flashed through my head, none of them good. "Is this about Megan? Did something happen?" She hesitated. I could hear the whir of dental equipment in the background. Someone laughing faintly. "Can you meet me for coffee after work? I don't want to say too much on the phone, but I think you should know something." Let me tell you, nothing good ever starts with that phrase. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Can you just tell me if she's all right?" "She's fine. It's just, I think there are things going on that maybe you don't know about. Please, Alex. 5:30 at Common Grounds? On South Lamar?" I almost said no. I almost hung up, told myself it was office drama, Megan's business, not mine. But then I thought about those late nights, the locked phone, the way she'd been lately distracted, smiling at something I couldn't see. I agreed to meet. The rest of the day moved like I was underwater, every conversation blurred. Even Denny's usual sarcasm bounced off me, offered to grab barbecue for lunch, and I just shook my head, lost in thought. At 5:30 sharp, I pulled into the parking lot of Common Grounds. I recognized Danielle right away. She'd been at our house once for Megan's birthday, the one who brought vegan cupcakes and a stack of funny dental stories. She looked uncomfortable now, picking at her coffee cup, hair pulled back tight. She stood when she saw me. "Thanks for coming." I nodded. "Is this about Megan?" She looked around, as if expecting someone to jump out from behind the espresso machine. "I really don't want to get in the middle of your marriage, but I know what it's like to be the last to know. I've been there." She took a breath. "There's a dentist at the clinic, Rick Carson. He's been spending a lot of time with Megan. Lunches, late meetings, and lately, it's more than that. They've been seen leaving together after hours. People talk, you know." I felt my hands go cold. "Are you sure? Megan and Rick?" Danielle nodded, looking genuinely sorry. "I saw them myself last Friday. It didn't look like a work thing, Alex. I thought you should know. I'm sorry." I thanked her. I don't even remember driving home. My mind was racing. Was it true, or was it just office gossip? Megan had never given me a real reason not to trust Hersher. She was private, but who isn't? I tried to think rationally. Maybe Danielle was jealous, or maybe she misunderstood. Maybe Rick was just being friendly. But doubt is a poison that spreads fast. That night, Megan came home late again. She was upbeat, chatty, telling me about a difficult patient, a broken printer, and the new smoothie place she and the girls tried for lunch. I watched her carefully, looking for signs of guilt or distance, but she seemed normal. Or at least what had become her version of normal. She smiled, kissed me, asked if I wanted to watch something on Netflix. I almost asked her about Rick, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I texted Denny. "Need to talk. You free?" He called right away. "What's up, man? You sound like someone ran over your dog." I told him everything, Danielle's call, the rumors, my gut feeling that something was off. Denny listened in silence, which wasn't like him. When I finished, he finally spoke. "Look, Alex, you want my advice? Don't jump to conclusions. People talk. Maybe it's nothing. But if your gut's been nagging you this long, don't just ignore it. You need to know what's really going on." I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "And what if I find out something I don't want to know?" Denny sighed. "Then you deal with it. But better to know now than be the last idiot at the party." We hung up, and I just sat there in the dark living room, staring at the photos on the wall and Megan at our wedding, hiking in Big Bend, grinning at a barbecue in the backyard. I tried to convince myself that it was all a mistake, that Danielle was wrong, that Megan would never. But the truth was, I didn't know what to believe anymore. The first real crack had formed, and no matter how hard I tried to pretend, I could feel it spreading. And I had no idea just how deep it would go. If you've ever stood on the edge of a high dive, staring down at water that suddenly looks a mile away, you know a little of what I felt that week. You tell yourself, it's probably fine, just nerves. And then something, maybe pride, maybe fear pushes you forward. And once you jump, well, there's no way back up. The day after my meeting with Danielle, I woke up before dawn. Megan was already gone. She had an early staff meeting, which wasn't out of character, but didn't stop my mind from spinning. My coffee tasted like mud, my eggs went cold on the plate, and by the time I left for work, I felt older than my years. I spent all morning running through scenarios. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe this was my father's legacy coming back to bite me. But the truth was, I wasn't okay with not knowing. I wasn't built for waiting by the phone, for making excuses, for quietly dying by inches like my mother. I could still see her, Susan Miller, strong as old oak, hands shaking as she folded laundry, eyes rimmed red, pretending not to notice the perfume that clung to my dad's shirts. How many years did she lose, waiting for a man who'd already left her in spirit? I swore, even as a kid, that I'd never end up like that. And now, here I was, staring down the barrel of the same kind of heartbreak. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened my laptop, searched for private investigator Austin infidelity, and picked the first listing that didn't look like it had been designed by a guy living in his mother's basement. I called the number. A woman answered, brisk and businesslike. "Good morning, ATX Investigations. This is Marcia speaking." "Hi, Marcia. My name's Alex Miller. I think I need help." She took my details, told me to meet her at a nondescript office suite off North Lamar that afternoon. I took a long lunch, told my boss I had a dentist appointment, ironic, given everything. Marcia looked like she'd seen it a late 40s. No nonsense, sharp eyes behind thick glasses. She listened as I explained my situation. She didn't blink at the details. When I mentioned Megan's late nights, the rumors, the locked phone, she nodded, as if checking boxes on a mental list. "Alex, you're not alone. Happens more than you think. We'll start simple phone and social media sweep, background on this Rick Carson, and some surveillance. If there's something to find, we'll find it." I nodded. "How much is this going to cost?" She shrugged. "Depends how long it goes. We'll keep you posted. First week, flat rate. After that, we'll talk." I paid the deposit with hands that felt like someone else's. She handed me a packet legal stuff, privacy agreements. "If you get cold feet, call me. But if you want the truth, you need to be ready for whatever comes out." I left her office feeling both lighter and more terrified than before. That evening, Megan was home early for once. She greeted me with a smile, told me she'd brought home sushi favorite. I tried to relax, tried to watch TV with her, but my brain was somewhere else entirely. I caught myself watching her like a stranger, every movement a clue, every laugh a possible lie. When she went to bed, I stayed up, scrolling through old photos on my phone. I found one from our first year of marriage, Megan with her arm around me, grinning in the sunlight, no secrets between us. I wondered when the distance had crept in. Was it gradual, or had I just refused to see it? The next morning, Marcia texted, "Started surveillance. We'll update as needed." I spent that day in a fog. At lunch, I finally opened up to Denny. "Dude, you actually hired a PI?" He whistled. "That's either the bravest or craziest thing you've ever done." "Maybe both," I said. "I just can't sit here and wait to get blindsided. My mom spent years ignoring the truth. I promised myself I'd never be that guy." Denny got serious for once. "Listen, Alex, no matter what happens, you've got people. Me, your mom, the guys at work. Just don't let this eat you alive." I nodded, but inside, it was already gnawing at me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went over old text messages between me and Megan, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, anything. I noticed that after every so-called late staff meeting, she sent me a photo from the office. A messy desk, a takeaway coffee, sometimes her coworker's birthday cake. Innocent stuff. Too innocent. Maybe. A couple days later, Marcia emailed me a series of screenshots and a brief report. Subject: Megan Miller. Tuesday night observed leaving work at 7:40, 2 p.m. with Dr. Rick Carson. Both entered Carson's vehicle, drove to downtown bistro, dinner, laughing, physical closeness noted. Left together, entered Carson's condo building at 9:10 p.m. Megan departed alone at 1:23 a.m., visibly upset. Attached, grainy photos. Megan with Rick, leaning close in a restaurant booth. Another, Megan wiping her eyes outside the condo. It felt like a gut punch, seeing it with my own eyes. There was even a screen grab of an Instagram DM, just a snippet Marcia pulled from a cloud backup, an inside joke about our little secret, and a winky face from Megan. I sat there in the kitchen, the evidence laid out in front of me like the world's worst birthday present. My heart hammered, my hands shook. I felt anger, hurt, even a stupid kind of relifat. At least I wasn't crazy. At least I wasn't imagining things. But then the questions came flooding in. Was it just one night? Had it been going on for months? Was it a mistake or a second life? I thought about my mother, about her silent pain and her relentless optimism, how she kept hoping, even as everything crumbled. I remembered her telling me, "Love can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed." I wondered if she'd been right all those years ago. That's when the resolve set in. I wouldn't wait for more pain. I wouldn't make excuses. I wasn't going to live on crumbs and call it a meal. If this was the end, then I'd face it head on. I texted Marcia back, "Keep going. I need everything. No turning back." And with that, I waited. The worst part wasn't the waiting itself, but what it revealed about me, the doubts, the broken trust, the ache of wanting to be wrong and knowing, deep down, I wasn't. I'd always thought I was the one man in my family who'd break the cycle. Turns out, all I'd really broken was my own illusion. There's a moment when you realize the universe really doesn't care how much you want something to be true. It was Friday, about 6:30, and Megan came home late. I was sitting in the kitchen with a half-finished sandwich, pretending to read an email from work. My phone had been buzzing all day, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. She came in with a strange, almost guilty energy, like a teenager who knows she's late for curfew but doesn't think the rules really apply to her. Megan was dressed up, more than usual. Heels, a new dress I'd never seen, makeup just a little too perfect for a staff dinner. I looked up and tried to keep my voice steady. "Big night?" She barely paused, glancing at her reflection in the microwave. "Yeah, something like that. I have plans." I waited, but she didn't offer anything more. Finally, I said it. "With Rick?" The silence that followed felt like the room had lost all its oxygen. She turned, lips pressed tight. For a second, I saw the woman I married, the one who told me everything, who used to cry at sappy commercials and call me at work just to say hi. But that Megan was gone. She looked at me square. "Alex, I need you to hear me out. I want to spend the evening with someone else. Just one night, just to know what it's like. I love you, but I need this. You're the only person I've ever been with. I want to see what else is out there, just once. After tonight, I'll come home, and everything will be like before." I thought I'd be furious. I thought I'd yell, or threaten, or throw something. Instead, I just felt empty. The words barely made sense, like she was talking in code. "You're serious?" I said, almost laughing at the insanity of it. She nodded, almost relieved to have it out in the open. "It's not a big deal, Alex. It's just one night. Everyone does it. I just want to live a little, and I know you'll understand. I don't want to lose you, but I need this experience." "Not a big deal?" My voice sounded foreign, echoing back at me. "Megan, this is our marriage. This isn't a hobby. I can't just accept this." She rolled her eyes, like I was the unreasonable one. "Alex, you're making too much out of it. I'll be back in the morning. We'll talk then." "Don't go," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "If you walk out that door to be with him, we're done. You don't come back. I mean it, Megan." She hesitated at the doorway, hand on her bag. "You're being ridiculous. One night doesn't erase everything we have." I got up, blocking her path. I tried to keep my composure, but my hands were shaking. "If you go, you don't live here anymore. I'm not living my mother's life. You knew how I felt about this. You leave, you're out." She scoffed, brushing past me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "See you in the morning, Alex. Try not to be so dramatic." She closed the door behind her. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like forever. I heard her car start, the headlights sweeping across the front window. Then the engine faded into the distance. I don't know how long I stood in the hallway. Eventually, anger kicked in, cold, clear, purposeful. I walked upstairs, grabbed a couple of empty boxes from the garage, and methodically started packing up her things. Every shirt, every toothbrush, every bottle of perfume. I emptied her closet, her drawers, the bathroom cabinet. I found the necklace I gave her on our anniversary and put it with the rest. For a moment, I almost lost my nerve. But then I thought about my mother, about years wasted waiting for a man to change who never did. I called a locksmith, apologizing for the late hour and the rush. I told him I'd pay extra if he could come by tonight. He showed up just after midnight, a burly guy with tired eyes and a sympathetic look when I told him why I needed the locks changed. He didn't ask any more questions. By the time he left, every entryway was secure. I set Megan's boxes by the door, along with her shoes and keys. I sat on the couch, staring at the pile, letting the anger simmer. Maybe I should have cried. Maybe I should have begged her to stay. But I'd already seen where that road led. Instead, I just felt relief. No more secrets, no more pretending. As I lay in bed, I realized I hadn't just lost a wife. I'd lost the version of myself who thought love alone could keep a marriage safe. The line had been drawn, and this time, I wasn't the one left behind. Morning crept in, slow, gray, and quiet. I hadn't really slept. There's a kind of exhaustion that goes past physical or raw, emotional hangover that hits deeper than any whiskey. I was up before the sun, made myself coffee strong enough to strip paint, and sat in the kitchen listening to the silence echo around the house. Megan's boxes sat by the door, a quiet monument to the night before. Just before 9, I heard a car pull into the drive, tires crunching gravel, keys jingling, the familiar shuffle on the porch. Megan's homecoming was routine until the lock jammed. Then the banging started. Not furious at first, more like someone puzzled and inconvenienced. She tried her key again, then rang the doorbell. My phone vibrated with a string of texts. "Hey, my key's not working? Alex? Open up?" I ignored them. Instead, I waited, let her stew in the confusion for a minute longer. The banging grew louder, sharper, with a hint of panic. Finally, I opened the door just enough to block her from coming in. She was dressed down from the night before, mascara smudged, hair pulled back. A woman who'd clearly expected to stroll in, sleep it off, and hit reset. I saw the surprise and the slow realization wash over her. "Alex, what the hell? Why can't I get in?" I kept my voice steady, cold. "Your keys don't work because you don't live here anymore." Her mouth opened and closed. She tried to laugh it off. "Come on, stop being childish. Let me in. We can talk." "Everything you own is packed by the door," I said, not moving an inch. "You made your choice last night. You walked out." Her bravado flickered. "It was just one night. We agreed we'd talk." "No, Megan, you agreed. I told you what would happen if you walked out that door. Now you're dealing with it." She stepped back, looking at her boxes as if they might sprout legs and follow her. I watched her try to summon anger or tears or anything that might move me, but I was past that. That's when her sister showed up, a familiar red sedan screeching to a stop at the curb. Rachel, always the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who thought any storm could be weathered with enough talk. She marched up, barely glancing at Megan, and turned her full force on me. "Alex, I know things got heated, but don't you think you're overreacting?" She said nothing happened. "She came home. You love each other. Let's all go inside and talk this through." I shook my head, feeling the exhaustion settle in my bones. "Rachel, there's nothing to talk about." She crossed a line. I warned her, and she did it anyway. Rachel tried a softer tone. "Look, sometimes people make mistakes. She says it was all just talk, that she backed out. No harm done. Can't you give her another chance?" I stepped inside, grabbed a folder off the kitchen table, and handed it to her. Inside were printouts, photos, screenshots, even a few video stills courtesy of Marcia, the PI. "I'm not stupid," I said quietly. "Last night wasn't a one-time thing. It's been going on for a while. There are receipts, messages, even surveillance. Want to see her with Rick outside his place? Laughing, holding hands, leaving together after midnight?" Megan looked pale, her eyes flicking from the folder to me. Rachel rifled through the evidence, her lips pressed in a thin line. Megan tried to save herself with words. "Alex, please. It didn't mean anything. It was just curiosity. I love you. I came home. Doesn't that count for something?" Her voice cracked, but I felt nothing. No urge to comfort, no guilt, just a cold ache where love used to live. "It counts for you," I said, "but it doesn't for me. I'm not your father, Megan, and I'm not my mother. I warned you. I don't forgive betrayal." She stared at me desperate. Rachel tried again, the old plea. "Alex, you're being cruel. Think about everything you've built." But it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was seeing things as they really were. I handed Megan her purse and watched her shoulders sag under the weight of reality. She gathered her boxes, one by one, and Rachel helped her load them into the car. There was no big scene, no apology grand enough to fill the gap. She left quietly, looking back just once, hoping for a last-minute reprieve. I closed the door. Back inside, I sat on the couch, surrounded by the silence. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just breathed. For the first time, I felt completely alone and absolutely certain that I'd done the right thing. There's a strange calm after the kind of storm that rips your life in half. Not peace. Not really, more like the dull hum after a fire alarm, when your ears are still ringing and the walls smell of smoke. That was the mood in my house after Megan left. The boxes were gone, her shoes and perfume too, but the air still felt heavy, as if her presence lingered in the paint. The first morning was the easiest, which in itself was suspicious. I got up, showered, made coffee, answered emails for work. No messages from Megan. I kept expecting to see her at the counter, nursing tea and scrolling her phone, but the kitchen was just empty. I can't say I missed her, not then. I just felt the absence like a bruise I kept bumping. Then the call started. Rachel again, her voice tight. "Alex, you can't just shut her out like this. She made a mistake. Are you really going to throw everything away over one night?" I didn't even argue. She knew my line, Rachel. She crossed it. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Silence. Then she hung up. It didn't stop there. 2 hours later, Megan's mom called. Her words tumbled over themselves, an odd blend of concern and subtle blame. You two need to talk. Don't make a rash decision. Megan's not herself. You know she's been stressed. I almost laughed like stress turned people into strangers. Mrs. Parker, I appreciate you calling, but this is between me and Megan now. I hung up before she could start the lecture, but they kept coming. Texts from cousins, a call from Megan's uncle, even a long pleading email from her father. I'd underestimated how many people wanted a say in the fate of our marriage. And then, my mother. She called in the afternoon, sounding hesitant and unusually gentle. Alex, I heard about what happened. Are you all right? Her tone softened the blow. I nodded, forgetting she couldn't see me. I'm fine, Mom, or as fine as I can be. She hesitated, and I could hear the weight of her own past in the silence. I know you don't want advice, but don't let anger make decisions for you. You know what living with regret is like. I just want you to be sure. That stung. She didn't mention Dad, but the memory was there, crackling in the background. I'm sure, I said quietly. I made my boundaries clear. She knew what I meant. Mom sighed. All right, I trust you. Just don't lock everyone out, okay? Let people help. It was the closest thing to comfort I'd had all day. But after I hung up, the ache of isolation got sharper. There's a difference between being alone and being abandoned, and now I understood both. That evening, I sat with a whiskey and a legal pad, making lists, half hoping it was all a nightmare. My phone blinked a reminder for the meeting I'd booked with Marcia, my lawyer, for the next morning. Marcia was a bulldog, shrewd, efficient, and blessedly allergic to melodrama. When I explained everything, she cut me off before I could start rambling. Do you have documentation? She asked, businesslike. Photos, screenshots, some video from the PI, I replied. Good. We'll file for divorce on grounds of infidelity. We'll request an emergency order so she can't clean out accounts. I want copies of every document by noon. I nodded. The conversation was surgical, almost impersonal, just what I needed. When I got home, the house felt even colder. The kitchen clock ticked too loudly. The silence started to get to me, so I called my friend Dave just to hear a voice that wasn't angry or disappointed. He listened, mostly. Then, after a pause, he said, You did what you had to, Alex. Don't let them make you the villain in your own story. That night I tried to sleep, but my brain was a dog with a bone, chewing through every memory of Megan. The good ones hurt most the lazy Sundays, the way she'd hum while cooking, the feel of her head on my chest when she was sad. I started to doubt, to run through what-ifs and maybes, but every time, the feeling of betrayal slammed me back to reality. Isolation, I realized, was part of the cost of holding your ground. The world wants you to compromise, to forgive and forget, to sweep everything under the rug for the sake of harmony. But I'd spent my childhood watching my mother lose herself in compromise, and I'd promised never to repeat her mistake. In the end, all I could do was hold on. The days crawled by meetings with Marcia, calls from banks, empty hours filled with nothing but work, and the relentless buzzing of other people's opinions. It was hell, honestly, but it was a hell I chose, and that made all the difference. I wasn't looking for sympathy or revenge. I was just trying to survive with my self-respect intact. Some nights, that felt like enough. Other nights, it felt like I'd lost everything. But at least I hadn't lost myself. And for the first time in a long while, that counted for something. A week after Megan left, the calls and texts from her family slowed to a trickle, replaced by a heavier, quieter kind of emptiness. There was no apology, no dramatic scene at the front door, just absence. I was still sleeping on the right side of the bed, half expecting to roll over into her warmth, and waking up with nothing but the cold and the groan of the radiator. It was Dave who first told me Megan was in Florida. He called on a Tuesday, his voice a low, cautious rumble. Hey man, you sitting down? I braced myself, waiting for another guilt trip. Rachel says Megan's living with Rick. They're in Sarasota now. Guess he has family there. Sorry you had to hear it from me, but I figured you'd rather know. I didn't ask for details. I just listened, numb, my thumb digging a crescent into the arm of the chair. I pictured Megan on a porch somewhere, warm sunlight, palm trees, a whole new world with no trace of me. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. He waited a beat. You okay? No, but I will be. The news hit harder than I wanted to admit. There's something final about knowing your wife has started a new life without you, especially when it happened so fast. I didn't call her, didn't text, didn't scroll through her socials or fish for updates from her friends. If she wanted to disappear, I'd let her. The next morning, my boss called me in. We need you in Denver, he said. Dealership, there's got a new contract, and I want you to handle the handoff. You'll need to be on site for at least a week. Fine. Anything to get out of Chicago for a while, to breathe air that didn't taste like regret. He added, almost as an afterthought, You'll be driving down with Sam. She's been with the company 2 months, smart, tough, good with people. You'll get along. I knew Sam only in Pasinga, sharp-eyed, no-nonsense woman with a dry wit and a habit of wearing boots in all weather. I shrugged. Sounds good. When do we leave? Friday. Take the company van. Try not to kill each other on the way. I laughed. He grinned, but I saw the sympathy in his eyes. Word gets around in small offices, and mine wasn't exactly subtle. The world of car sales is a gossip mill by now. Everyone knew my wife had run off to Florida with another guy. Friday came, wet and gray. I packed a duffel with clothes, a laptop, and a folder of paperwork. The drive to Sam's place was quiet radio off, city waking up under a drizzle. She tossed her own bag into the back, slid into the passenger seat, and greeted me with a nod. Morning, Alex. Ready for a few days of bad coffee and good highways? As ready as I'll ever be. We drove for hours, mostly in silence. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, and Sam didn't force it. She seemed comfortable with silence, occasionally humming to herself, tapping out rhythms on the dashboard. Somewhere outside Des Moines, she finally broke the ice. You look like hell, she said, not unkindly. I snorted. That obvious, huh? She shrugged. Divorce or taxes? Divorce. Been there. She paused then. You want to talk about it? Or you want me to crank up the radio and pretend we're both somewhere else? I considered it, then shook my head. Let's just drive. By the time we crossed into Nebraska, the sun was breaking through. I realized I hadn't thought about Megan in hours, not really. Anyway, the road, the landscape, the company of someone who didn't pity mate all felt like a reprieve. At the first hotel, Sam checked in, then turned and handed me a key card. We're next door. You snore. I knock. For the first time in days, I laughed. She grinned, and I realized how much I needed to hear that sound. In the evenings, we ate cheap takeout, watched trash TV, and swapped work horror stories. Sam had a way of making even the worst situations funny, turning my misery into something a little less sharp. One night, over beers and microwave popcorn, she looked at me sideways and asked, So, what's your plan after Denver? I shrugged. Figure out how to be single again, I guess. Start over. She nodded. You will. Trust me. By the end of the trip, something had shifted. I wasn't healed far from it, but the ache was duller. I could see the road ahead, blurry but real. And for the first time since Megan left, I felt like I was actually moving forward. Sam and I returned to Chicago a week later. We didn't make any promises, didn't talk about what's next, but there was a new comfort between USA's shared understanding that came from living through the worst and somehow coming out the other side. And somewhere, down in Florida, Megan was building her new life. I didn't need to know any more than that. My own story was just beginning again, and that was enough. The trip to Denver was supposed to be a simple work assignment, a string of meetings, some handshakes, a few hotel beds and gas station coffees. But by the second day on the road, I realized it was becoming something else entirely. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was Sam. For the first few hours, tension sat between us like an uninvited passenger. I kept my answers short, my eyes on the highway, still half lost in the fog of everything I'd left behind. Sam, for her part, wasn't much for forced conversation. She'd fiddle with her playlist, thumbing past country and hip-hop, settling on old-school rock. Eventually, she gave up and rolled down the window, letting the interstate wind do the talking. It was a strange kind of comfort to people, not pretending to be anything other than what they were. A little battered, a little wary, stubbornly moving forward. The first real crack came at a rest stop outside Kearney, Nebraska. I was fumbling with the coffee machine, cursing under my breath, when she nudged me aside with a smirk. Give it here, city boy, she teased. You'll flood the whole counter. I tried to muster some irritation, but found myself grinning instead. What, they don't teach coffee skills in Chicago? She scoffed. They don't teach patience either, or how to let someone help. For a split second, I wanted to tell her everything: the fights with Megan, the empty house, the voices of family echoing in my head. Instead, I handed over the cup. Sam filled it without spilling a drop, then handed it back with an exaggerated bow. Your Majesty? That was the moment the mood shifted. Not all at once, but enough that by the time we reached the hotel that night, we were arguing about the Cubs versus the Rockies, not about which radio station to play. Over the next few days, routine set in. We'd drive all day, bicker over directions, race to beat the next rainstorm, stop for burgers, or, once, for a pie Sam insisted was life-changing. I never did get the recipe, but the memory stuck, a little oasis in a desert of transition. Nights were stranger. The hotels all blended together, identical beige walls, humming AC units, thin sheets that smelled faintly of bleach, and lost dreams. We'd eat in silence, sometimes side by side on a bed, food balanced on our knees, watching some mindless sitcom or the local news. The tension that used to fill those hours was still there, but it softened, turned into something like camaraderie. Sam was easy to be around once I let her in. She didn't ask for details about Megan or prod at the wound, but she noticed things: the way I flinched at certain songs, the tightness in my jaw when a text pinged in from one of Megan's relatives. "You don't have to talk about it," she said once in the low light of a Kansas hotel bar, "but you don't have to carry it alone either." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, just grateful for the offer. A strange thing happens when you spend a week in close quarters with someone new. The little annoyances start to feel familiar. The way she always left the toothpaste cap half on or turned up the heat at night. The way she'd break into a loud, off-key version of any song that came on the radio, just to see if she could make me smile. She did, more often than I expected. One night, after a long drive through a thunderstorm, we ended up in a diner in Sterling, Colorado. The place was empty, except for a waitress who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Sam ordered pancakes for dinner. I followed suit, too tired to argue. "Bet you never thought this is how your summer would turn out," she said, drizzling syrup over her stack. "Bet you never thought you'd end up stuck with a divorcee in a company van, halfway to nowhere." She looked up at me and grinned. "Hey, at least you're not a serial killer, right?" I laughed, an honest, unguarded sound. For the first time in a long while, it felt good to let the mask slip. By the time we finally made it to Denver and wrapped up the work meetings, something had changed. Not love and I yet, maybe not ever, but a sense that the world was bigger than the pain I'd carried out of Chicago. Sam was part of that. So was the road, the miles, the moments where I'd forgotten to feel sorry for myself. Driving back, we took our time, detoured through the Rockies, stopped for photos at scenic overlooks, and let the silence between us settle into something easy. When we finally crossed the city line back into Chicago, I realized I didn't feel dread. For the first time in months, I felt, if not hopeful, then at least ready. Ready to sleep in my own bed, ready to open the windows and let some fresh air into my life. Ready to see what, if anything, was next. Sam and I unloaded the van, swapping one last story before she disappeared into the city with a wave and a crooked smile. I stood on the curb for a minute, letting the noise and rush of home wash over me. This was it. I was back. Not the same man who'd watched his wife walk out. Not the ghost who'd haunted empty rooms. Someone different. Someone maybe on the edge of new beginnings. That night, I slept soundly. For the first time in a long while, I was finally home. The summer wore on, and with it, the last threads of my old life seemed to unravel one by one, almost quietly. You know that feeling when you're driving in the rain, and at first you're tense, fighting the wheel, but then you realize you've made it through the storm and you can finally breathe? That was me, sitting at my kitchen table, stirring cold coffee, when the phone buzzed with news about Megan. The call came from Rachel, her sister, the same Rachel who once told me, "Give her time, she'll come home." But this time, her voice was small, almost guilty. "Alex, you probably already heard. Megan's in the hospital." I froze for a second, then found myself almost numb, the kind of numb that comes from too much pain. "Is she all right?" "She'll live," Rachel said. "Rick, her boyfriend, he lost it. He hit her. She called 911. They arrested him." I didn't say anything. A few months ago, I probably would have dropped everything, jumped in the car, and driven 1,000 miles just to see if she was okay. But now I just sat there, the ticking of the kitchen clock louder than anything Rachel was saying. "She asked for you," Rachel said, a pause stretching out. "She said she was sorry. She wanted you to know she made a mistake. She said she's not pregnant." That caught me off guard. The pregnancy, her excuse, her leverage, the reason half the family insisted I try to work it out. It was all a lie. I felt a flicker of something relief, maybe, but mostly just resignation. Whatever was left between us was gone. "I appreciate you letting me know, Rachel. I really do. But I think it's best if we just move on." Another pause. "I get it. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for everything." I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the phone for a long time. The next day, my mother called. I was ready for another round of give her a second chance. But instead, she just said, "I'm proud of you, Alex, for not letting this break you, for choosing yourself this time." It was the first time in months I'd heard that tone in her voice. Not judgment, not disappointment, just support. Even my sister, Lucy, called to check in. She didn't bring up Megan at all. Instead, she told me about her kids, their latest disasters, her endless pile of laundry. It was normal. It felt good. Work became a welcome distraction. There was more laughter in the break room, more inside jokes, less pity in the way people looked at me. When I ran into Sam in the parking lot, she tossed me a grin. "Still upright, huh?" "Barely." I shot back, but I smiled. We started grabbing coffee after work. Nothing dramatic, just easy conversation, a bit of light sarcasm, the kind of thing I'd missed. She wasn't in a rush. Neither was I. The best part? With Sam, I never felt like I had to explain myself. She didn't push, didn't prod, didn't ask for more than I could give. She just showed up, and sometimes that's all a guy really needs. One Thursday, we ended up at a late-night diner her idea. Vinyl booths, bad coffee, all-night breakfast. She told me about her own messy divorce, how she'd once sworn off relationships forever, and how forever had started to feel a little too long. "We're a couple of strays," she said, raising her mug in a mock toast. "But you know what? Strays find each other." I laughed, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel forced. That night, as I walked her to her car, she hesitated, just for a second, then reached out and squeezed my hand. "I'm not saying this is anything serious," she said, "but it's nice to not be alone." I squeezed back. "Yeah, it is." I went home that night and realized I hadn't thought about Megan all day. Not once. There was no anger, no sadness, not even a ghost of the man I'd been at the start of the year. Just a kind of peace. Like coming up for air after holding your breath too long. My family stopped tiptoeing around me. The silence at home felt different, lighter. The empty drawers, the extra space in the closet, they were just space now. Not reminders of loss, but invitations for something new. I still woke up sometimes, expecting pain, expecting memories to knock the wind out of me. But every time, it was easier to shake off. A new chapter was opening. Not loud, not dramatic, just quietly hopeful. And, for the first time in a long while, completely mine. There's this moment that comes, sooner or later, after the world stops spinning. The paperwork's done, the last awkward phone call is over, and you're left standing there with your arms full of stuff that doesn't fit in your life, any more old photos, faded shirts, half-forgotten passwords. You look at it all and realize, honestly, you're not angry. You're just done. That was me, late September. Sunlight spilling over my kitchen table as I boxed up the last remnants of a life that, for all its noise, was finally quiet. I kept expecting to feel something. Grief, nostalgia, ragitake, your pick. But what I felt was lighter, almost like relief. A little laugh escaped as I found Megan's encyclopedia collection. Honestly, who even owns those anymore? I'd bought the damn set for her when we first moved in, thought it'd make us smarter, like grown-ups. All it did was gather dust and remind me I'd bought into an idea of perfect that never existed. It took me a while, but I started to see the good in that, too. I learned to let go, to own up to my mistakes, and, as much as it stings to say it, to thank Megan if only in my head for showing me how not to live in denial. There's an odd kind of grace in being forced to start over. You get a front row seat to your own growth, awkward as it might be. The first few weeks of true freedom felt surreal. Work was steady. I'd finally stopped waking up expecting to see Megan beside me, or worse, waiting for some cryptic text that would knock the wind out of me. The house was quieter, yeah, but it wasn't haunted. I filled the fridge with the food I actually liked, caught myself whistling while cooking. Who knew? But the real change came slowly, in small, ordinary moments. A run on a cool Saturday morning, the peace of the city just waking up, helping my sister move apartments, and realizing I wasn't angry at her for taking Megan's side in the early days. She just wanted the best for everyone, and now she saw I was doing all right. Lunch with my mom, who finally stopped apologizing for things she couldn't fix. "You did it, Alex," she said one afternoon, pride in her voice. "You made it through." The truth is, nobody gets through this stuff spotless. You bleed, you screw up, you eat too many frozen dinners, you maybe drink one too many cheap beers, with coworkers who know better than to ask what's wrong. But one evening, not long after the divorce was final, I found myself sitting around a backyard table, a warm breeze blowing in from the lake, burgers sizzling on the grill. Sam was there, her laughter easy, her hair tied up, a beer in her hand. Some friends from work, my sister, even my old college roommate who just happened to be passing through. There was no big speech, no dramatic toast. Just a feeling that, for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I glanced around the table, soaking it all in. The food, the laughter, the stories traded back and forth. The way Sam leaned her shoulder into mine, not possessive, just present. Not a bad restart, huh? Sam nudged me, catching my gaze. I grinned, raising my bottle. "Here's to new beginnings, Sam, to leaving the encyclopedia salesman out on the porch where they belong," I joked. Everyone laughed, and for a split second, all the weight of the past finally slid off. The night ended late, the stars out in full force. As I cleaned up, Sam lingered nearby, helping stack plates and swat at mosquitoes. We talked quietly, no rush, just the calm that comes when you know the worst is finally behind you. I walked her to her car, the gravel crunching underfoot. She hugged me longer than usual, no words needed. As she drove off, I stood there and breathed in the cool air, letting it fill my lungs. Back inside, I tossed the last of the encyclopedias in the recycling, turned off the kitchen light, and caught my own reflection in the dark window. I looked tired, maybe a little older, but for the first time in years, I didn't mind what I saw. No more cheap tricks, no more pretending. Just honest life, a little bit messy, but finally real. And for the first time, I figured maybe that's enough. Maybe it's more than enough. So here's my conclusion. No more encyclopedias, no more illusions. Just a little faith in myself and the guts to live like I mean it. And hey, if I ever do buy another set of books, you can bet it'll be something I actually want to read.